Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects. Take a guess. Is it tax evasion? I do hate the IRS. Is it drinking? I do have one too many pints from time to time. If you guessed the former, you would be wrong. My favorite subject is piracy. Now, I could talk about piracy autistically for hours and hours. So today, I would like to focus on one pirate in particular and his actions, which would lead to what I would call Pirate 9/11. I promise this will make sense in time. Before we discuss this event, I would like to get into the background information about Henry Avery the person and why he became a pirate, and generally just the logistical information about these events and the people who committed them, specifically Avery. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about how history often is rewrote to idealize people who are not meant to be idolized. Henry Avery was born on August 20th, 1659 in England, and like many pirates of his time, little was known about his early life. That being said, young Henry Avery started his naval career in the Royal Navy, and this fostered his love for sailing and his aptitude for it. Interestingly enough, Henry was also a slave trader. Pretty bad. Pretty fucked up, dude. That's not cool. We at Not a Bandit Studios do not support slave trading. You can quote me on that. Please do, actually. He often also tricked slave traders into getting into slave quarters and then trading them as slaves. Really stand-up guy, I would say. And on these merchant ships and slave ships, this is where Henry Avery really began his naval career. Eventually, he found himself on a Spanish merchant ship where he would soon lead a mutiny due to poor wages. And this would begin Avery's pirate career. Pretty cool. Now, the slavery is really bad, obviously, but we're not even getting started yet. We're not even getting to the Pirate 9/11 nonsense, which is quite crazy. And this is what we will be discussing now. The raid of the Grand Mughal fleet. Now, this is where it gets exciting and very awful and deplorable, for that matter. And this is where this is Pirate 9/11, for that matter. And this is what Henry Avery is most notable for, and what the subject of the last Uncharted game was. Pretty good game. Like that game. Didn't play it. Watched a documentary. It was like a movie. Pretty cool. Because I'm poor and I can't afford a PlayStation. Patreon going up. Subscribe to Patreon. Donate below. We're sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. We're sponsored by Ray-Bans. We're sponsored by Sonoran Desert. None of that's happening yet. Anyways. The raid of the Grand Mughal fleet was the crowning jewel of Henry Avery's career. It was a massive raid against the Mughal, which was essentially India at the time, the Mughal treasure fleet. And there were tens and tens of ships in this treasure fleet, and Avery assembled a pirate armada to attack this fleet, which, on a side note, so fucking cool. All right? Can you imagine a couple of dudes, in today's world, assembling a fleet of ships to raid, like, Temu shipments? You know, your Amazon shipments aren't coming on time because an organized criminal IGO assembled an armada to raid ships. That is just incredibly cool to me. Obviously, you see organized crime, but you don't really see organized maritime crime anymore, which is, you know, obviously good because, you know, I'm not a criminal and, like, I like my Temu fleshlight to come in on time. Really cool idea that, you know, a bunch of people came together to create organized maritime criminality. Pretty cool. Anyways, what we're going to be talking about in the future is not that cool. So he assembled his pirate fleet and set upon the Mughal treasure fleet. Outnumbered hundreds of men and hundreds of guns, Avery set upon the grand ship and boarded it with a lucky broadside, hitting the main mast. The prize was his. And before we talk about the atrocities that would unfold, I'd like to mention the scale of the financial loss that happened during this raid. Hundreds of millions of dollars worth of jewels and gold in modern day exchange was lost that day to piracy. Hundreds of millions of dollars worth. This essentially crippled the East India Company during the time and almost dissolved the company entirely. Riots broke out in Indian cities, in Mughal cities. Chaos ensued, and it almost crippled one of the largest corporations of the time because of the just sheer amount of plunder that was taken that day. It was estimated to be potentially one of the largest, if not the largest, pirate raid in all of history. And possibly one of the largest criminal raids in all of history. Which, if to believe, more gratuitous estimates, that would be the case. Anyways, now we get to the incredibly deplorable part. So, after the raid, Henry Avery and his crew essentially just killed and tortured and raped tons and tons of people. And I know I've had a kind of loose attitude towards this video, but it was genuinely one of the deplorable things. And this most deplorable things that would happen in that century. Henry Avery and his crew just did these deplorable things, and the world took notice. And this is what I mean essentially by Pirate 9/11. The notoriousness of this crime and the sheer veracity essentially provoked an international response and call to arms against these criminals. Henry Avery was also the first person to have an international bounty put on his head because of this. The similarities between the reactions can actually be seen between when 9/11 happened in America, the banding together, the realizing of, these incredibly deplorable people that hurt so many people. And the same thing happened during the Grand Mughal raid of the treasure fleet. And that's what I mean by, Pirate 9/11. It sounds a little goofy, but it's actually, one of the most deplorable, events that would happen during that time. And then what makes this story even more interesting is that after this incredible, heinous act, Henry Avery took his crew, made each of them very rich men, and after a few times almost getting arrested, he disappeared forever. Now, some people think he went on to go and found Libertalia, pirate paradise in Madagascar, again in the Uncharted game. Other people think that he buried his loot and disappeared on some island. And what I happen to think is that after the division of loot, the incredible expenditure of the task at hand, Henry Avery just simply disappeared into obscurity and slight wealth. I don't think he absolutely got what he deserved. I think someone like that, as much as I would absolutely love to think Henry Avery was this incredible person, right? That I can believe the idealized stories of Henry Avery as this incredible pirate, this Robin Hood who took from the poor and gave back to the, or took from the poor, took from the rich and gave back to the poor. Someone who stood for something. And there were examples of pirates who did, but Henry Avery is one of the most notorious, is often remembered through some historical accounts as a Robin Hood, as someone who did good, when in reality, he was just the very deplorable person, just awful. And the worst part is he was never brought to justice, And yeah, I would like to think that if he didn't do these deplorable things, I'd be rooting for the guy. I'd hope he was never found, But he is kind of, I'll say it, a very shitty person. And that's why it's really important not to necessarily idealize historical figures. Because a lot of times, especially the further back you go in history, you really don't know all the details. You don't know exactly what this person did. And you certainly can't believe some of the accounts which prop them up as heroes. Although those do exist, certainly. Now, thank you for listening to my autistic rant about piracy. I wanted to try something new, a video where I'm, more informative perhaps, and just kind of putting my ideas onto paper, so to speak. My next video, my videos are actually going to be kind of all over the place. I'm just throwing things at the wall, seeing what sticks. Next video is going to be about talking to women. And then the video after that's going to be about talking to men. Anyways, joking about that last part. Yeah, just wanted to see what sticks. Thanks for watching, guys. I promise I will be uploading more frequently to my 95 subscribers. Have a good one, y'all. Take it easy.